Okay, everybody, I hope you guys are ready for another big one today. We got Luke Neumann on of Neumann Films. He's a DP, he has his own blog. You got to check it out. Tons of great tutorials and lots of wonderful info. He's usually breaking new grounds with the magic lantern and other aspects of filming that he likes to just jump headfirst in and teach us all about it. We're going to be talking 5D raw stuff because he's been doing some amazing things with it, and he's going to share with us his thoughts on it and etc. Surely everybody's been on top of it. I mean, if you're a big fan of No Film School like I am, they've been breaking the news daily with all that information. And today we got Luke Neumann on himself, and we're going to get into it a little bit, how it's changed his filming, how does he think about it in comparison to other cameras. He actually has an Epic, so that's going to be interesting to hear how he discusses that, and also just general cinematography talk in relation to the 5D and its new raw capabilities. So sit back, enjoy. It's going to be a good one, and let's do it. Okay, Luke, welcome to the show. Good to have you on. Everybody's excited. You know, we tweeted this out yesterday, and you put it on your Facebook, and everybody's driving me nuts to find out what we're going to talk about. So you know what? I don't even know what we're going to talk about, but let's just go for it and see and see what happens. So welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Yeah. So basically, you've been running the show with the 5D Mark III and and the RAW and basically all the magic lantern, everything that they've been doing on it. Everybody wants to know, you know, where's it going? How realistic is it going to be to use the 5D Mark III as a raw shooting machine? So, you know, why don't you take it away? Give us a little bit about what your thoughts are on that in the future, how it's going to go and everything.
I think, well, as you know, it started about 2 weeks ago. They got like 1 frame per second working, or 10 frames or something like that. So just if you look at the timeline from the last 2 weeks, as it went from like 10 frames per second, and now it's working at full 24p for 4 gigabytes of recording time. And that's just in 2 weeks, and the whole thing's still in a pre-alpha testing phase. I've talked to the Magic Lantern guys. I've used Magic Lantern for years, and right now it's a pretty stable thing. You know, when it first came out, people were kind of scared to put it on their camera. They were scared it was going to brick their camera. I've installed it, reinstalled it, uninstalled it countless times on pretty much every DSLR I've ever owned, and I've never had an issue. So I think they'll get it by the time it comes out to the public. It'll be really usable. Maybe not, you know, I don't know if the file system will change. You know, it's always going to be large files. You're going to have to convert them. So there is that part of it. But I think, you know, there's going to be a use for it. Like whether you just shoot green screen stuff with it, you know, having that extra color information, that will come in handy, you know, even if you just use it once or twice a year. So I think it'll progress more in the coming weeks. They've already added sound recording.
Oh, okay, that's big.
But yeah, I mean, there's some big things they've been adding, and I think it's you know, if you currently own a 5D3 or a 5D2, it's a free upgrade. You know, like it's a big deal.
Yeah. But here's the real question. You know, you're a cinematographer first and foremost. We all love our toys, you know. We're guys, and it'll never end. You know, whenever they come out something new, we want to check it out and we want to use it. But let's talk from a cinematography standpoint. Is this changing how you go out, how you think? Yeah, you know, how they're gonna approach their filming. Do you think that's gonna happen?
Unless you consider stuff like dynamic. I mean, if you're at the point in your cinematography growth where you're looking at dynamic range, and let's say you're working with the 5D3 and you know its limitations as far as dynamic range goes, and you're keeping an eye on the highlights or something like that, you know, like, okay, if you're paying attention to the dynamic range, you're going to light your subject a little more to not blow out the highlights, or, you know, there's certain things that it might change that a little bit, but all in all, I don't think, you know, it will change. It should. I don't even think it should change your overall shooting style. Just make everything look that much better.
Right. So I mean, you know, the samples that I've seen so far, and later, you know, we'll talk a little bit about. You have an Epic, and you did a little side by side, which is I think it'll be real hot to talk about. But the way I saw myself, because I got the 5D Mark III, and actually one of the reasons that I got the 5D Mark III is because of the Magic Lantern and all the basically you get all this, you know, higher level camera stuff, you know, like waveforms and whatnot in it, and I wouldn't get that on a competing camera with that same price range. So that was important to me, and that's not just toys. I mean, I'm out there filming, and I do a lot of run and gun documentary kind of work. And I need to know if I'm clipping, you know, and it's so, and there's those are standard things that we're used to until the DSLRs came and blew us out the water, and then we didn't have them. But we loved the image so much, so we stuck with it. So now to have that with the Magic Lantern, that's you know, monstrous. And now to get a RAW, it's really ridiculous. The thing is that I can't see myself shooting let's say an interview for half an hour in RAW. That's not going to happen. So the way I thought it was going to work into my workflow is whenever I want to do like the beauty shots, B-roll shots that I know are going to be 10, 15-second shots, that's why I'm going to use that RAW.
I mean, if you do something like stock footage, which we've done in the past, I mean, it's used for that application, you know, 10, 15-second shots that are supposed to be just beauty shots. You know, if it's a passion project where you have more time to just sort of like go out and just film, and you're not in a huge rush where you're controlling your environment. You know, if all you own is the Mark III and that's your camera, why not shoot RAW and just maximize the quality that you're getting out of that gear? I think one of the biggest things that I think is cool about this whole Magic Lantern thing is that, you know, if you already own those cameras, it kind of signifies like, okay, you can turn off those camera companies trying to pitch you all these cameras. Like, now you have something that's free on this camera that's like, it just makes you want to go out and shoot and test it out. And I think that's just really cool. I mean, it's free. The Magic Lantern guys are doing all this in their spare time for free. And, you know, I think it'll cause people to go out and shoot instead of thinking about gear, which has kind of been a weird argument that's popped up with this whole thing is stop worrying about the RAW, just go out and film. It's like, what do you think people that install this on their cameras are going to do? They're just going to sit there and stare at it? No, they're going to go out and film and test out the RAW functions. And another thing you were saying about Magic Lantern and just sort of how it applies to real world shooting, I was able to take the HDR function and apply that to real estate videos.
Yeah.
So I got hired. Yeah, I got hired to do these real estate videos over at the coast, and like one of the big selling points of the houses is that it has these views of the ocean. And the guy was saying, oh, you know, you should shoot it at like sunset and sunny days and stuff. And it's like, you know, you could light the interior, or you could try out this Magic Lantern function, and it worked perfectly. You know, I was able to expose the outside and show off the views that he wanted to see, and then expose the interiors as well, and it made a huge difference in his videos.
Right. So that you know, you touched on a point that actually in one of my last interviews with Bruce Logan, and this is a guy is so experienced, and he said something that stuck with me, is that, you know, he did a piece with Philip Bloom, and he did you know, he does things with some other guys that are, let's say, they're not Hollywood DPs, but he mentioned about them that, you know, what he loved about these guys is that they just go out and work all the time. They're proactive. They're not like waiting around for a job to come in and that's when they shoot. They just are constantly doing something. If they don't have anything that's paid for, then they'll just go and make a project and do a project. And I think that's what you're basically touching on is like, you know, just go out and use it and do it. And that's more important than any of the specs and whatnot. You know, once you do that, okay, great. Then you have RAW as another, you know, it's like.
Yeah, I think sitting around and waiting for like a camera to shoot a project is ridiculous. I think maximizing the camera you have is like a no-brainer. So that's basically what it boils down to.
A vast virus database has been updated.
Yeah, we're not cutting that out. We're keeping that. You know, so you know, let's talk about a little bit about cinematography. You know, and your progression and your skills and how it developed. You're self-taught. And, you know, I'm surprised as more and more of these interviews that I do, a lot of people are self-taught. So it's like, you know, at first I was a little nervous when I got started, thinking that, you know, do I need to go to school and everything? And even and just with this last interview with Bruce, he was saying that, you know, I'm self-taught too. That's just how it is. Just go out there and do it. So why don't you tell us just, you know, in a couple sentences, your progression and maybe some of the key things that you've picked up along the ways, you know?
Yeah, I think, you know, self-taught is kind of a weird way to put it because, you know, you're taught what you know in some shape or form. You know, like I've watched tutorials online, so people have taught me certain things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I started making videos when I was like 10, 11 years old with my parents' old like VHS cam. And I'd make stop motion videos with action figures and just, you know, random stuff like that. I didn't have any way to edit. So I'd have to edit in camera, you know, hit record and then pause and then change the angle and hit record and pause and have it all sync up perfectly on the video cassette tape if I wanted it to be, you know, flow together nicely. But, you know, learning in that way and starting young, I think might have set up some bad habits. You know, like I didn't know really any of the basics of what I was doing. So when I started to do this for a living at like age 24, I had to kind of go back and start from scratch and learn the basics about frame rate, shutter speed, f-stop, all that stuff. And so I think getting a base of knowledge is kind of key, but at the same time, not going so much by the books that you lose your own creative touch.
Yeah.
And I think my own creative touch is something I picked up really early. And I think film school is great. It just depends on the kind of person that you are. Like, how do you learn? I personally will only learn from doing something. Somebody could sit there and tell me how to do something 50 times, and I wouldn't be able to do it. But the second I do it myself, it's in my mind just forever. Right. So I think it just depends on how you learn. Depends on what kind of person you are. I just seem to do better going out and doing as opposed to just sitting there and having somebody tell me how to do something.
Yeah, that seems like, you know, I think some people would disagree and say that they're not that way. They don't not necessarily disagree. They would say that, you know, okay, to each his own. That's not the way I learn. But yeah. I beg to differ. I think everybody learns that way. Meaning, even if you learn well from books or from learning or from watching, that's all book knowledge. That's not going to help you one bit on set. That's not going to help you one bit when you need to execute. So it all comes down to experience. You have to get out there. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't hear you. Say it again.
You know, no matter what you end up learning through books, you need to execute it and apply it at some point.
Right.
And that will probably be you relearning everything, you know, all over again.
So, tell us a little bit about, with this RAW that came out, you know, it's giving us basically more dynamic range, more ability in post. But let's say you don't have that, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you have a camera that's not that capable of doing all these things. Even one of the cameras that, you know, a T2i or whatever that doesn't have RAW yet or whatnot. So what are some of the things that you focus on when you're filming? You know, if you don't have the epic, you don't have to make sure that you can still get those amazing images at the end of the day. It's a little bit of a.
I mean, I think if you were using something like a T2i, you know, it's obviously lighting, framing, you know, like your actors, your set design. I mean, if you start getting into that, there's 100, 500 things you need to know and that you could do to make whatever you have on that screen look better. Or just stand out. And so, I mean, I think, you know, it's a progression of knowledge. You know, when you start out on the T2i, my advice and the way I went about it is I didn't upgrade from the T2i until I was ready to. Like, I grew in the T2i and I learned how to maximize its potential. And then, you know, once I felt like I had kind of like gotten to the end of the T2i and it was actually holding me back from getting the quality I was achieving to get now, and then I upgraded my camera.
Nice.
So I think, you know, I don't think upgrading your camera, you know, from the T2i to the Epic will solve any of those other issues. It's one of those things where you get the camera and you sort of expand, then you expand the rest of your game. And you expand lighting. Like right now, I feel like I own the Epic, but I have not maximized the potential of what I can do with the Epic because I look at it being used in big Hollywood movies, and that's it being maximized. Yeah. So I need to work on lighting and all this other stuff, and that's where my, you know, like work needs to go right now. So I think it just depends on where you're at in your growth.
Yeah, I think you made a big point because you know, people that are watching this are at all kinds of levels, but a lot of times people ask me, you know, what lens should I get, what this, what that, and they're just starting out, and I tell them all the time, I started on a kit lens, I was on that kit lens for a long time. I bought the little 50 millimeter, the plasticky $100 1.8. I was on that sucker for a good year and a half, and and then once I was really doing well, then I went and got some primes that are from some Nikon manuals and things like that. But I think you're making a good point. Is first get the most out of what you have before you graduate, and that's a mistake a lot of people make.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, when I had the T2i, I didn't know what moire was and aliasing and like all the stuff people were saying was wrong with the camera. I didn't know what it was. And it's one of those things. Once I started to like see it and then start to think about it, then it was like, okay, I don't like that now that I notice it. And I've always compared like your growth in cinematography or filmmaking as kind of like being a wine taster. When you first start to drink wine, you couldn't tell the difference between a $200 bottle and a $20 bottle. Like, it just tastes like wine. But as you drink more wine, you kind of get like, you get into it and you understand the little subtleties of it. Then you start to pay attention to those little things more and more often, and you don't really like the cheaper wines anymore. So it's like, as you move down the path of cinematography or filmmaking, you'll just, what you like and don't like, it seems to become smaller and smaller and smaller, and a little more refined.
I think that's genius.
Yeah, and I think that's just the natural progression of any person, wherever they're at. As long as you're wanting to get better, that's the path you'll eventually take.
Yeah, that's a genius comparison. I never heard that before. That's a genius comparison, if you ask me, with the wine. Because what I heard in between the lines there is that you basically need to liken wine, and I know nothing about wine, but like I understand how wine is that you have to develop your palate basically in wine. So here, okay, so it's not in your mouth, but it's not in your nose, but it's in your eyes. You have to learn why does a shot that you like, what is making it look good, so that you can aim for that. You don't even know why it looks good in the beginning. You just know it looks good, but slowly you start to recognize these nuances, and then you can go ahead and try to do it yourself basically. So
like the progression from like a point and shoot, that's what I started out on, as a point and shoot Windows Movie Maker. The progression from a point and shoot to a T2i and editing in like a Vegas, that's a big jump. That's like, okay, I realize with the point and shoot, I need to just set the camera on a tripod, not just run around like this. Like, that was a big jump. But as you go up from like the T2i to the 5D, the differences are like aliasing and moire. They're really small details that the average viewer probably doesn't notice. I doubt if I sat my dad down and showed him a shot, he'd be able to pick out moire or aliasing,
yeah, sure.
But that's just, I notice it because that's where I'm at in the progression. I just start looking at smaller and smaller things to improve.
Yeah, let's shift back real quick to the 5D Mark III. Stu had something interesting Stu Maschowitz had on his blog Prolos. He was basically saying, I think you touched on it a little bit, is that this is just basically a nice big wake-up call to the big camera companies that, stop messing with us. We know the cameras can deliver some hot stuff, and if you're not going to do it, then these independent, smaller guys are gonna start, doing it. So start giving it to us. But I wanted to ask you, so two questions. One, if you had to choose right now one camera, and budget is, let's say, I don't know, is decent, in the $3,000 to $5,000 mark or something like that, what would you choose right now?
Just speaking about video.
Video, right.
That's tough because
I'm obviously leaving one piece out, which is what kind of stuff do you plan on shooting with it, right? Because it's different cameras for different.
Yeah, I mean, if you factor in stills at all, it'd be the 5D Mark III. If you're taking stills out of it, then it becomes a little bit more difficult of a question. I haven't used the Blackmagic camera enough to really have an accurate opinion on it. I just kind of know it from specs. And so the 4K one that's coming out, it sounds, maybe if you're just focusing on video, the better option than the 5D Mark III, but until I get in and mess around with it, I guess I don't have an honest answer for that.
Right.
I like the frame look. I like the bigger frame, the bigger sensor. So if it were me right now, I'd choose the 5D Mark III with the option of RAW over the 2.8K Blackmagic camera that's out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my
Interesting.
own personal.
Interesting. What's so you know, as somebody who's focusing on cinematography in the sense that your focus is getting the nicest image, obviously to fit within a story. Because every time I say that, people say, "Hey, wait a minute, what about story? Story is the king here." Yeah, we all know story is story is king, but our job is to make the visuals look good so that the story will shine. So within that context, what are some of your go-to stuff? Go-to gadgets, I guess you could say, technological stuff that you have in your camera bag, lenses, things like that. That we want to hear the insider scoop.
I really like the old Nikon lenses, the Nikkor AIS series. I've used those for probably 2 years, and I found just like the quality of those lenses, you can get them for. They might be more expensive now because they kind of became like these cult classic lenses, but you can get them for way cheaper than you can a Canon L series, and I found that they're that kind of quality. You know, as far as go-to, I really like dolly shots. I've reviewed the Red Rocket dolly from Zeep Cam, and we use that for the Smith Rock video. I love my dolly shots, and I'll try to throw those in to show off a location or set an opening shot for a scene. I've been into aerials for a while.
I saw that on your blog. You're selling those aerial footage. That blew me away. I said, "What did this guy do? He spent a day with the Epic on a helicopter?"
Yeah, it was actually the Alexa, the owner or the only reseller of it in the U.S. Aerial Filmworks. I contacted them just to sort of feel out like what their costs were just for renting, and he had actually watched our site, watched our channel, and he said, I'd like to have you do a review of it. So we got a kind of a free day with it just in exchange for doing a review, and so that was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice. But see, that's again that go-getter attitude, that proactive. You're not just sitting on your butt waiting for things to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing video, as a living for 4 years, and nothing good has ever happened when I've sat back and waited. When I'm out sending emails or out proactive, that's when good stuff happens. Yeah. And so if there's one piece of advice I could give to young up and comers, it's not sit around and wait for stuff to happen. Go out to businesses, go out, send your reel out daily, to the same people, bug them with your reel and just say, I want to work. But yeah, I think that's a good point. That being
on one of the posts on the site, I talk about some of the things that I think a cinematographer needs to succeed, and one of them I highlight there is the business side of it, which probably people don't like to hear. They want cinematographers that's all art and it's all But if you're not getting work and if you're not getting out there, you just won't end up continuing to grow. You got to get.
Yeah, and the thing is if you're not out there getting work and if you're not paying attention to that aspect of this whole thing, then you're going to need a full-time job. And if you have a full-time job, that's 40 hours a week that you're not devoting to your craft. So, obviously if you're doing cinematography as a living, you're not out there filming all the time, but your mind is always in that place. Your mind is always thinking of film. So while you might have to suck it up and go do some jobs that you don't like, you're using a camera, you're learning certain things about filming. Absolutely. And you're learning a lot more about filming than you would be if you were working a normal 9 to 5. So I'm not telling everybody to go out quit their job and become a cinematographer. There is something to be said for focusing on the business side and giving some thought to how to make money doing cinematography.
Something just came into my mind real quick. Do you use on your daily kind of work, not on narrative work, but anything but narrative, let's say? Do you use a follow focus or any kind of just on your?
Yeah, I've never honestly even touched a follow focus unit.
Yeah,
never
I hear you.
Seen one in person.
Yeah,
I've used a map box once, but no follow focus.
Yeah, I felt like it. I mean, obviously, I think for narrative work, maybe somebody else is even pulling the focus or whatnot, or you got to hit your marks and all that kind of stuff. That's a different story. But other than that, my thing is I need to be very light when I work so that I can get a lot done. So anything that I can do, strip down that camera as much as possible, that's what I aim for.
Right. And the thing for me is, like, going back to the business side, it's like, I don't like asking people to come help out on video unless I'm paying them. Like, yeah, I don't like asking friends, hey, you want to come out and shoot? It just feels really like I'm too old for that now. I need to pay people if they're going to come, so I'm kind of a cheapskate in that way. Like, you know, it's the business side of things. It's the business side of me. Like, when we're out filming, it's me, it's my wife, and it's, you know, a good friend that has helped out for a long time. You know, we used my friend Pete Dryden. He acts, and he helps out behind the camera. And, you know, so that's why something like the sci-fi that we're doing, we're putting the money on screen. You know, we're putting money into it, but that's all on screen. It's still just my wife and I behind the camera doing all that stuff.
Yeah, that's impressive. So, I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you got going on with this sci-fi. But real quick, let's go reverse again. I know some people are dying to hear about what you discovered on the raw, what you're getting on the raw 5D Mark III versus your Epic that you have in your bag. Like, who in the world would pull out their 5D Mark III when they have an Epic right next to them? The truth is, honestly, I don't have an Epic. I don't even rent one. I don't, have one. No friends have one. I would still whoop out that 5D Mark III because it's right here in the palm of my hand, and I could, just get work done. So
we were out shooting another project, and I was setting up a shot, and it just looked like that would be a good comparison shot. So I just grabbed the 5D and got it. I don't really want to I don't think we should post the side by sides because people just draw their own conclusions. So we made the raw footage available for download on our site. We'll just put the link in the description of this video, I'm assuming. Yep. And people can download and just come to their own conclusions about it. I know why I bought the Epic. I know, what it's good at and what it's not good at. Same with the 5D. And I would never, in a job that requires the Epic, the 5D3 isn't even really an option. So it's one of those things where it's not really a valid comparison. It's more just it was a fun side-by-side. But at 1080p, I mean, you can argue the fact that nobody's really finishing in 4K yet. And when you scale down that 5K Epic shot to 1080p, I mean, you can draw your own conclusions, but I thought they looked pretty close.
It also seems like it would be a no-brainer for a second and third camera, for sure.
If you can match them up, if they're both raw, you should have no trouble matching them up. If you're going to finish in 1080p, yeah, like you said, it'd be a great B cam.
Yeah. Okay, tell us a few words, then we'll wrap this up. Tell us a few words about your upcoming movie that you're working on. Actually, when's it coming out? I don't even know when it comes out, and etc.
I don't know when it comes out either. Like I said, we're kind of going through the production. We don't want to rush it. We're focusing on quality, and so we're filming when we can, juggling the whole business thing. So it's like we're working on it when we have time. But it's a prequel to a sci-fi web series called The Beacon, and so it's basically a little short film, and we're focusing on the behind-the-scenes tutorials of how things were made. So we did a tutorial on our channel a while back called How I Would Film It, a Dialogue Scene by a Waterfall.
I loved it, by the way. Loved it.
Yeah. I think it was kind of just a cool way to go about a tutorial. You take a scene, a challenging scene, and you just sort of break it down and you show every little step. So we're taking that approach to the material for this sci-fi The Beacon. We're going to release 8 behind-the-scenes How I Would Film It episodes every week for 8 weeks. One focusing on pre-production, production, editing, coloring, sound, all that stuff. They're going to have their own super in-depth How I Would Film It behind-the-scenes tutorial. And at the end, we're going to release the royalty-free soundtrack and some different stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a new direction for our channel and a new direction for the behind-the-scenes tutorial stuff that we do. Like I said at the beginning, I don't love doing the camera tutorials and stuff like that. I think this will be a good combination of real world knowledge and stuff that I'm learning while doing this and sharing.
All right, Luke. One last thing before we wrap it up. I want you to give, a piece of advice to those out there that are, I always pretty much frame this the same way. They're out there, they're doing it, they're doing well, but they want to take that next, that next leap. Now, of course, everybody says go out there and just practice. But what's something that you think they could, really sink their teeth into it to really move their level up? Yeah, anything you would advise?
I just think it'd be like keeping a consistent mindset of like you need to get better. And I think the best filmmaker, I'm sure Spielberg still has that mindset of like you're always learning. So always keeping an eye on the next step of your progression and what it takes to get there. Like what are you bad at? Like right now, like I said, I'm bad. I'm not bad, but I need to get better at lighting. So that's the next step of my progression is and maybe the next step of your progression is focusing on the business side of things. And then that's a step that people, like we talked about earlier, you're going to need to focus on if you want to do this full time. So yeah, just focusing on improving, even if you think you're really hot right now.
Yeah.
Look at your stuff and try to improve it. Be your own worst critic.
That I think you pretty much summed up the concept of the show and my site, Big League Film School, is that's what it is. It's let's learn from somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In other words, you may know a lot about a lot of stuff, but when you hear and watch somebody else, the way they do something and broke it down, there's no way you can't learn. Keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and then that's how you. As a matter of fact, even Bruce Logan said something that I was like, I asked him a question, and he said, I'm still learning this. I'm getting better, and I was blown away. I said, you're still learning that, huh? I mean, he said every day. There's no day I don't go on a set and I don't learn. So that's what you're saying, and I agree.
Yeah, I mean, if you stop and that goes for anything in life. I mean,
yeah,
take that approach to anything. So it's kind of bland in that way, but it holds true.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, in the end of the day, isn't top secret stuff. It's really just down and dirty, advice that you can pretty much get from like you said, from other avenues of life too. It's the same rules apply.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Luke, it was awesome. Listen, keep doing what you're doing. We're checking out your site all the time because you keep putting on posts on there that just kind of, give us all kinds of insights that really help out. So just keep rocking it. And, thanks for being on today.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, Luke, take it easy.